All right. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be such a fun episode to dive into with my guest and friend, Erica. I want to just give a little bit of context for how I found you, Erica, which you may already know, but I'm sure you hear this all the time. You came across in my Instagram feed, and we get, I swear, Instagram is like, it just gives you two people you know, and then two people you don't, or that you don't follow. So it's like you see things coming across all the time. And obviously the algorithm knows what we pay attention to. And I see things that are spiritual come across all the time. And so I don't follow everyone. I try to say, okay, who is for me and who isn't. And I know you've probably heard this before, but you do these really cool intuitive exercises where, you send energy into a stone and people are supposed to guess. And I got it right. And I'm so critical of myself when it comes to being good with intuition, especially when I'm actually looking for it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I kind of got on and started watching some of your videos. And I was like, I really like her energy. I like the way she teaches. It feels like a unique angle. And then we reached out to you. You agreed to be on the show. You connected with my producer, Glenn. He gushed to me forever about the amazing conversation the two of you had. And it just feels very much meant to be. So I'm so happy to have you here with us, Erica.
Thank you so much for having me. I love when things just kind of fall into alignment because for me, it's just it's magical. It just shows just how things just kind of line up. So thank you.
Could not agree more. And you are in New York, is that right?
Yes, I am.
On Long Island?
Yes. In Hicksville, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, Long Island.
The reason I ask is I hear my old voice in you. I was born on Long Island and I had that accent up until we moved to North Carolina when I was 7. So I kind of lost it, but I'm like, oh, that's how my whole family sounds.
They say we have that little bit of an accent. So
yes, exactly. Well, we have that in common as well. So I love it. So I always like to start by asking, even if you have a definition for the type of work you do, I think it's interesting to have you describe it. So how would you actually describe the work that you do?
So I would say that I have the title of a psychic medium, but I also like to talk about how I am an intuitive teacher. I'm a mentor. I'm somebody who just kind of leads you into where you feel like you're aligned. And on the most part, I feel like the openness that I have when it comes to teaching people and just kind of breaking things down for them, it just kind of puts me in a place of just being a overall spiritual teacher is what I would like to say.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. And you've been open to this for a long time. I heard you in another interview really talking about your background and your family. So I'd love for you to tell us about that background in childhood as your spiritual gifts seem to have always been pretty present for you.
Yeah, so I feel like I've always had this ability to just kind of sense, to kind of feel things around me. And as far as I could remember, when it comes to my family talking about me and the strange things that I would have done as just even a baby, I would be 2, 3 years old and I'm just talking to the air and they're like, who is she talking to?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of started off that way. And then as I want to say when I turned about maybe 7, it became a little bit more prominent for me where I realized I have these imaginary friends and I would always find myself saying I can feel you. I know you're there and just feeling a presence. So my background really with my family, they are Catholic, but it's a little bit witchy as well, which is probably not good to say in the same sentence, but
Okay.
I come from a Hispanic background, so it's actually pretty normal. So my grandmother, she was a palm reader. She was known as somebody who would kind of read people's palms, tell them about their lives, anything that was going on. So it kind of runs in the family that way. But there was always this fear of what we shouldn't do and what is around us. And that fear always stuck with me. But again, I've always just had this sense of knowing that something was always around me. I would see them outside of myself, like objectively. I would see them out and I would kind of see like these apparitions walking by. I would also hear things all
Hmm.
the time and I would kind of just pick up on things before people would say it, music. It was just very odd to me.
Hmm.
And that's how it kind of started in my younger like days, right? When I was probably up until maybe 13. And then, of course, teenage years, life happens and you just kind of forget about it. Then I started a job in law enforcement. And when I did that, I want to say that it felt like a knowing, like I knew that this was something I wanted to do. My dad did it, so I was like, you know what? He's telling me do this, go into this. It's safe. So I kind of had this: do I become a police officer? Do I go into corrections? What do I do? So I ended up going into corrections, and there for years, but I've always had this keen sense of knowing when something was going to happen. Like I would feel it in my bones
Mm.
and I would just kind of have this awareness of, ooh, something's not right here. The energy is off. And I couldn't really understood what it was exactly, but I just kind of would give my supervisor a heads up, like, I don't know, something feels off in here today. I think something's gonna, go off. So kind of just leading up into when I actually retired, which was because I ended up getting sick. Um, I I feel like it was a point in my life where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And it was really after I had my second child. Things just kind of, it's like I couldn't push it down anymore. It was
Hmm.
just right in my face. And at that moment in time is when things just really felt like it was going crazy for me, where I was hearing things and I actually felt like I was literally going crazy. I
Wow.
said,
Okay.
whoa, what's happening here? So, at that point, that's where I feel like a lot of it was coming up, but I could no longer push it down.
Okay. I want to dig into a lot of that. So you highlighted even as a child having a lot of these abilities and it kind of sounds like all of your clairs were activated. I can never remember like the actual terminology, but you described, seeing, hearing, knowing, feeling, right? So like this was all very activated for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, you had that Catholic background, but you also were not unfamiliar. Were you sharing these things with your parents or your grandmother? Like, hey, I'm seeing some things, or like, how did that all come about conversationally for between you and your family?
So with my mom, I would always tell her, like, I saw something or I had a dream. And, at first it was just like, oh, okay, but be careful because it could be something evil.
Hmm.
But it
Hmm.
was like we're acknowledging that these things are happening and they are true, but we're also going to put this emphasis on it being evil.
Hmm.
So that's how the conversations would always go. So of course I would always come back into this place of fear where I was just like, oh no, I don't want to move into this energy because I don't know what I'm opening the doors to.
Yeah.
So that's where it kind of would always end up.
So the conversations maybe made it feel a little bit scary when you would see things or apparitions or whatever. Did you actually feel afraid or no?
Yes, there were times where I did feel afraid when I would see, like, for some reason, the house that I lived in as a child, that house was super haunted. Like, it was a house that was moved from one place to another place.
Hmm.
And it had so much history. And there was this little girl that I thought everybody else could see and terrified like, it just scared me. I would see her just kind of sitting underneath my mom's window in her bedroom with her like head and her knees. And it was scary. I was like, oh my goodness, what is that? And I would just constantly find myself in the bed, always covering myself from head to toe, tuck the blankets in underneath my body because I would be terrified. So,
Hmm.
yeah, there was a big sense of me being fearful of those experiences.
And do you think that the fear came from just not understanding, or do you think that there was actually something to be afraid of?
I feel like it came from a place of not understanding. I mean, I could say that now,
Hmm.
my experiences and just really learning about energy and just understanding the spirit world overall. But it did come from a place of just not understanding and just really pushing past fear and just
Hmm.
moving away from those ideologies.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have this family background of your grandmother being a palm reader, your mom is like open to all of this as well. But is it fair to say, because it almost feels like, yes, there was this openness, but there also wasn't at the same time. It wasn't like they were facilitating your growth necessarily, is the impression that I'm getting.
Yeah, they absolutely weren't. I say it's like a joke. I'm like, imagine if I was really learning and backed up in my abilities when I was younger, I'd probably be like amazing now. Not that I'm not, but I would have had more experience. But
Mhm.
yeah, there was this sense of like push and pull. So I wasn't necessarily in a place where they were supporting that growth. It was just kind of like, oh, yeah, this is just what happens. And we just have to be careful. It's kind of how
Mhm.
it would always show up for us. So.
Yeah. And at what point did you really start to kind of lean into it?
So, I leaned into this. I remember, so it's so funny because after I had my first son, it feels like every time I had a child, there was just like this leveling up of my awareness and understanding. And I
Yeah, yeah.
remember going to work one day and I was just like, how the heck did I know that? Like somebody had said something and I said it before they said it. And it was just really odd how it kind of played out. And I
Mhm.
remember coming home and I was Googling, am I psychic? And I remember looking at the psychic abilities and I was just like, no way. And I just threw the phone to the side and I didn't pay attention to it. Um, but after my second son, that's when things just kind of said, okay, yeah, enough pushing it down. You need to step into your power. So that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened. I was having a bunch of health issues. It was almost like my life was spiraling.
Mhm.
It's what we would call a tower moment where things are
Okay.
kind of collapsing for us to really see things as a new beginning. And it started off with my clairaudience where I would hear voices. And this was scary for me because at the beginning, I was just like, what's happening? Like, do I have like a mental illness? Like, why am I hearing voices? So, of course, like anybody else would do, they would go seek, medical and say, hey, this is what's happening. Am I all right? And it would sound like a radio station, like these
Mhm.
mumbles. And that's how it started. And then I was seeing things and dreaming things, and then they would happen. And it was just like all over the place. I feel like what I say is kind of like spirit kind of put me on this fast track of just like all my abilities exploding at once. And I could no longer just ignore them. I want to say back in 2018 was when, well, 2016, I had my son. So that's where it really started to like open up, having my medical issues. But 2018 was when I fully stepped into this. And I was like, you know what? This is what it is. I'm just going to keep going into this because I came into this actually with fear of death. Believe it
Mm.
or not, fear of death led me down the rabbit hole of what happens when we die. So that's what kind of opened up the door for me. And 2018 was the year that just kind of set it off.
Yeah, such an interesting story. Like to think that, because it wasn't like you just had this spontaneous awakening, right? You'd been experiencing this your whole life, but it really took decades for you to be like, okay, this is real. I'm gonna step into this. And I don't know. I'm sure you've thought about. Do you think if you had really been encouraged as a child to explore this and it had been a more integrated part of your life, do you think you would have ever had that tower experience, as you called it?
Probably not. You see, I'm a real big believer in things happening exactly the way it's supposed to,
Hmm.
unfolding exactly when it's supposed to. So I believe everything in my life that I have experienced, all the traumas, all the, I guess you could say horrible experiences were something that taught me. I learned from it. And I think I needed that to really go through life and to be able to sit here today, to call myself a psychic medium, a healer, somebody that can help other people with my experiences, because that's kind of how we work with this type of work. We give help and healing through our life's experience to help others kind of navigate theirs.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So, you went through that whole process of skepticism in yourself, right? And you're in resistance to fully stepping into your gifts and your beliefs. And you've started to describe, the kind of radio sound. I can actually imagine this being quite useful, but also somewhat confusing in law enforcement because a lot of people wouldn't believe or whatever. Like, how would you know what you know? What are some of the other things that started happening to you around that really kind of explosive time of awakening?
So, one thing that really kind of just turned the switch on for me, and I haven't even really talked about this experience because it was quite wild for me. And I remember one day saying, you know what? If this is real, then I'm going to have this experience. And the experience I was really aiming for was an astral projection experience, but a
Okay. Mhm.
one that I was consciously aware of doing in the moment and just kind of popping out. So I remember listening to this video on YouTube. I found so many, but one kind of stood out to me. And I just said, you know what? Nobody's home. I'm going to just experiment and see what happens. So I did this exercise that was being taught over the audio. And I had a moment. It was so brief, but it was so real. And I literally remember looking back at my body and kind of seeing myself. I was see through, I was blue. I was like, whoa. I was like, this is real. This is so real. And after that, I just kind of kept opening the doors to different things. But a lot of people who begin on their spiritual journey tend to go through many doors to finally figure out which is the one that I fit in, which is very normal. But again, it could be confusing if you're like, okay, I want to learn this, this, and this, because there's so many aspects of spirituality, right? That you could really dive into. So
Yeah. And for people listening who may not know what astral projection is, can you describe it and also why you chose that as your avenue?
strange, right? So astral projection is when well, it's usually done at night when you're sleeping. You're in that sleeping state and you kind of pop out your body. Everybody does it. Some people are more consciously aware of it while others are not. Some people can do it just like at the snap of a finger. And it's almost along the lines of lucid dreaming, but not. We are actually having an experience. You can travel different places, different dimensions, things like that. So it's a whole thing. But I chose this, which was funny because ask me if I can do this now like that. I can't. I'm like, nope, I can't do it even if I try to. But I chose that because for me, it felt like the most bizarre thing. And to
Mhm.
make me a believer, I
Yeah.
needed to have that experience. So I needed something extreme. So that was the extreme for me to have that out of body experience in order for me to say, okay, this is real. And I'm just going to go figure out what's next. And that's what kind of set it off for me. But again, just coming from somebody who's super skeptical, like I just was like, I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. I don't
Yeah.
even know if it's real. I don't even know if I could do this. So
Yeah.
it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, for some of the experiences I've had personally, I always second guess them. I'm like, I totally just made that up. I must have watched a movie at some point that showed me something. Like, so how did you feel certain that okay, this actually happened and I didn't just make it up with my mind?
So for me, it was starting to go to like practice,
Mhm.
right? So I would practice my abilities, whether it would have been psychism or just going in with mediumship. So it took me to go to a place where I could actually see people that I've never met and just pick up on different things. And then they could validate that for me. So that was important to go through that experience. So it could be in real time and just say, wow, like, how would I know that? And once I figured out the mechanics of it and just how, the spirit world was operating through me, I was just like, wow, so that's how it comes in. It comes in like little pictures in your
Mm.
mind or memories from my childhood or a movie that I would have watched because it does happen like that, believe it
Mhm.
or not. It
Okay.
does. So it would just come in like that. So I needed the validation.
And do you prioritize kind of that validation and evidence when you're actually practicing your mediumship?
Oh, 100%, because that's what I feel is very important for others to understand the whole idea of mediumship. I look at it more in a way of healing and not performative. When I do mediumship for people, I want them to experience their loved one as if they're sitting right in front of them, bringing through memories, healing, emotions. And that's all going to come through, my feelings, my clairs, but most importantly, specifics, things
Mhm.
that nobody else would know, things that only they would know, like the shirt that they have hanging up in the closet or something that they have tucked underneath their mattress. Like you can't Google that type of information. And how would I
Yes.
know that? So
Mhm.
evidence is very, very important with mediumship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when you are receiving messages, so for example, the mentor that I've worked with for many years, she works with her spirit guides and her oracle cards. So, what are the tools that you primarily use in your work?
I use oracle cards. I use tarot cards, sometimes just myself, just
Hmm.
feeling it. the energy. And with mediumship, it's just really just kind of sitting there, becoming aware and just feeling the presence of spirit. But overall, I do love using oracle cards. I love using tarot cards. When it comes to just reading like psychic energy, I do that, or I don't use anything. Sometimes I find myself just shuffling and I'm just kind of giving whatever information is needed. So I just kind of say, I put it out there, send me information, allow me to be the channel, the telephone to bring whatever healing and guidance is needed for, whoever I'm reading for. So it's different all the time, but I love cards and just kind of being me.
Yeah. And so it sounds like sometimes you are, uh, so when it's just you, right? And you're not using the cards, it's more of like feeling and knowing. Are you hearing things? Are you seeing images? I just want to like know what it's like to be you during a reading.
So everything just kind of lights up for me. Usually I will go into it with feeling.
Mhm.
And especially for psychic work, I'm feeling into, let's say I'm reading you, I'm feeling into the aura. I'm feeling into what colors are surrounding you. I'm feeling into what is it that you are wanting to do or what have you been going through. And I just kind of feel it through my body as if it was my own emotions just kind of coming up,
Mhm.
or it's kind of giving me memories of things that maybe I have experienced in my life. So I can hear things. I get little flashes of images in my mind. I will um, hear music sometimes, which I
Mhm.
love when that happens, but I hear music. And sometimes I will even get a sense of like feeling in my body. Like if you're dealing with some type of pain or anything, like I'll just get it throughout. So everything just kind of lights up for me. Or even if like you are changing your diet or something, I can taste like healthy foods. It's so weird, but
Oh,
it's kind of
interesting.
everything just kind of lights up.
So interesting. And has it always been that way, or have those senses heightened? Have you been able to sharpen them?
For sure. Definitely sharpen them with practice. Practice is something that is constant. It's forever. It's like this is a forever journey. It's not just
Mhm.
something you say, hey, I got this, that's it. You consistently have to practice. You have to grow your abilities. So I am a big believer that everybody has these abilities. It's just a matter of becoming aware. You can be somebody who's naturally born or somebody who's just figuring it out right now. Like it's available to everyone.
Mhm.
And I feel like, oh gosh,
Okay, we can pause.
my brain just started shifting into reading. No, we're not doing that. That's
What
how it
happened?
happens.
I'm so curious how your mind works. What happened?
Yes. I mean, that's how it happens. Like I get into this space of when I'm talking about reading, which is funny, which is so funny because that's how I open up my readings. I talk
Okay.
about how I read.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is like spirit's like, okay, hey, let's do a read. No, we're not doing
So interesting.
So yeah, that's how I open up my readings. I talk
Okay.
about how I read. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. It shows up in so many different things and everything lights up.
And can you choose what you receive, or it just is going to come to you how it wants to come to you?
So the most important thing when it comes to this work is trusting.
Hmm.
Trusting whatever comes in. Trusting the information, however it comes in, whether it's a feeling, an image, a song, it's saying it, not holding on to the information, but giving it is the most important thing. And that's actually kind of what I teach my students. It's like this surrender, this letting go, and just giving what you get.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like just trusting whatever it is.
And how did you learn to trust it? This is like
Ooh.
such a big thing, I think, for me and many.
Oof. So, okay. So, one thing about psychic work, mediumship, it's all just a little puzzle. It's a little piece of it. This journey is all about self discovery. It is
Hmm.
about you understanding yourself, that personal development that we have within ourselves. So, when it comes to trusting, right, we have to trust our process of life. We have to trust our human experience in order for us to kind of have that shift over into our mediumship, our psychic work. So it's like, okay, what are the areas of my life that I'm not trusting myself with? What do I feel like I'm trying to control? So I had to let go of a lot of things in my personal life, beliefs, a lot of just any thought process that I had that was restricting me, where it was allowing me to be a better channel. So I had to learn how to let go in my personal life in order for me to allow this to kind of trickle over into my mediumship and my psychic work.
Yeah, and that's hard, right? Because I think it would have to be genuine letting go, genuine trust. You can't just be like, "Yeah, I've let that go. Yeah, I trust it," but like, deep down you're like, that's not really true, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was extremely difficult. And when I talk about letting go, like, I mean, in so many different areas of my life, whether this was letting go of people that I just didn't feel like I was in alignment with, or letting go of just beliefs where there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of pain and suffering, where I had to literally go through moments of looking at myself and maybe saying, hey, you know what? I don't like that about myself and I need to change that. How can I do that? How can I be a better human and also be a better healer? What areas in my life about myself am I just not feeling, and what can I improve to be a better channel, a better medium? So it was not easy. I mean, it's a continuous process.
yeah, yeah, and one that, you probably have to give yourself a check on, especially in those times where your personal life is challenging you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, like, so you are doing all kinds of work under this umbrella, but part of what you're doing is teaching mediumship, intuitive work, right? And
Yeah.
so clearly the students who come to you for that are much more open. You're not just grabbing some random person off the street being like, okay, let me teach you how to be spiritual. And they're like fighting it the whole way. So they're coming to you already open to the idea, but I'm sure you see some resistance or that kind of thing from your students. Where do you see them often struggle with, I guess, trusting themselves and what comes to them the most?
It's just believing, is
Mhm,
this real? Am I even doing this? So there's like this sense of imposter syndrome that comes through.
mhm.
And it's actually very common within this work
Yeah.
because you feel like you're making everything up, especially how the
Mhm,
information comes in. So I'm always telling them, it's like my little catchphrase is like surrender and flow. Just
mhm,
surrender and allow the information to flow. And I'm always just telling them, even if it doesn't make any sense, just say it,
mhm.
because it's not for us to make sense of it. It's really for the person that we're reading for or whatever information that's coming through. And it's just allowing yourself to be wrong, being
Mhm.
okay with being wrong, being okay with getting a no. It's part of the process, it's part of the learning. And I mean, it's just like life, right? We have moments where we feel like things are going right and we think it's
Mhm.
supposed to go a certain way, but it's releasing the expectation and thinking, hey, this is supposed to be like this. But no, we can't do that when we're working with, spirits and just the overall mechanics of psychism. We have to let go and release an expectation.
Absolutely. When it comes to like where you're getting the information from, right? So obviously if you're doing some channeling in your mediumship, it's going to be from, someone from the other side.
Yeah.
I guess like sometimes I feel like information, I'm like, okay, does it come from uh my subconscious? Is it coming from my higher self? Is it coming from guides? Is it like where does information come from, maybe for you and for others? I don't know if that question really makes sense.
Oh, no, it makes a lot of sense. That's actually one that's very common. So that's like the difference between like psychism, mediumship, and just understanding the process. So,
Mhm,
like for psychic work, we are perceiving, we are like pulling the information from the person that we're reading through their energy. As for mediumship, we are receiving. So it's thinking like your brain is a satellite and we are communicating with this universal consciousness, is what I like to call
mhm,
it. And for me, like even sitting in meditation and just getting an idea of what this would look like, it's almost like a grid of information is how it shows up for me in
mm.
meditation, because I have asked, because again, the skeptic in me wants to know, where does this come from? What does this look
Yeah,
like?
yeah.
And for me, it was shown as this grid of just information, and it's just this ether where we can all connect to. And it's almost like ideas. Where do we get our ideas from? Ideas are something that come from this space, but whoever takes it first and works on it is who it's going to work for, right?
Mm,
So it's like I don't know, it's magical, but for me, it feels like the information is always coming from the back. It always comes from around me. So it's very big and broad. And it almost feels like, when you kind of look in the corner and you're like, is somebody standing there? Is somebody watching me?
Hmm.
That's what it's like for me. So I kind of feel this presence move in and I just start receiving information. So it's like, I want to say, I call it universal consciousness, is what it feels
Yeah.
like for me.
Yeah, that resonates for me too. I don't, you know what you're making me think of? I don't know. You're familiar with Dolores Cannon and
Yes.
her work. So in her book, Between Death and Life, have you read that one?
You know what's funny? I think that's
She
on
has
my
so much
bookshelf.
work. It's like
Yes, she does.
so much.
I think I have that. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of the shorter ones, but she, someone that she's done hypnosis with really describes this tapestry. I don't know if that sounds familiar, but it's like this tapestry on the other side of like all things that have ever existed and all things that are true. It's like it almost feels like that image for me. I don't know if intuitively you're talking, if
No,
I'm talking about
yeah.
the same thing, but
I
yeah,
do. I completely understand it. And you
yeah.
know what's so funny? Like when I thought about it at first without having like any knowledge of, okay, where does this information come from? For me, it felt like just like a big hard drive, like this
Hmm.
big computer space with no ending. And we could just pluck this information. And the way it feels like there's no past, the past, present, and future are all kind of existing at the same time. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what it felt like. It's just this big, broad space of just frequencies and just being able to like plug it out and just get the information. So I understand that exactly what you're saying. I believe I read that book. I have so many books. So
Yeah, and her work is so robust, like it's
yes.
pretty crazy. But so like what you're describing, this grid, the tapestry, this collective consciousness, is it the same as the Akashic records, or is it like just different words for the same thing? How would you describe it?
So, the way I would like to say the Akashic records for me, just through my experience of even just going in to do readings, it almost feels like a different type of dimension. Like it
Mhm.
feels like a layer of a different world. And that's kind of how I see dimensions. And the way it was described to me, it's like a book. And in the book, there's pages, and each page will represent a different dimension. And going into the Akashic records, it almost feels like I am first obviously asking for permission first before going in and just kind of seeing this library of books, but it feels like a different world. It feels almost like this endless library of information to tap into. So it does feel like a place in a different dimension is what it feels like.
Interesting. Yeah. And this is, where I come back to the point where I'm like, okay, we just have to accept if we're going to believe in this stuff, that there are things that as humans we can try to explain or try to rationalize, but are really unexplainable and incomprehensible to the human mind. I'm like, I just have to get to a point where that is what I accept. And I think that's where I'm at. Otherwise, it's like, no, but it can't be that way. Like, I really, like, inside of me feel that time isn't linear. Like you were talking about, like all of our lifetimes are happening all at once, like everything's happening all at once. But to the human who is so focused on time, right, like we started this call at a specific time and like I have to be somewhere else, so it's just such a different way of even trying to think or operate. I don't know. It does all make me excited to find out what happens on the other side. I'm not anxious to get there, but really through all of these conversations and all of this work, you mentioned really having a fear of death, but I'm afraid of what happens leading up to it, but I don't feel like I'm afraid of that moment of transition and everything that happens afterwards. So I'm actually curious if you're open to talking about it. This was not on my list of questions because I didn't know this before, but why do you think you had such a strong fear of death? What was that about?
I used to have a lot of dreams of like people passing and like worldly events, and they would come true. So the experience of seeing that, feeling that felt horrific. So when I really sat with the fear of death and just tried to understand exactly what and where that came from, for me, it's the things leading up to that, the pain, the suffering, and what really happens in that moment of transition. Now, I know that to be very different now, which could be hard to grasp. And I think it's just one of those things, again, that we never will fully understand. But I had a lot of health issues. Like even as a kid, I was always sick. I was always sick. And there was just this fear of of dying in a way of being sick.
Hmm.
And again, it was just always something that kind of, it was like this catastrophic way of passing. And it always just kind of sat with me up until a moment of me thinking the world was going to end in 2012. That was a real thing. I really thought the world was going to end. Like there was just this anxiety. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Nothing happened. And I was just like, I keep doing this pattern of, of fear, of putting myself in a place of just this extreme panic. And I think it really is just that, what leads up to it. And of course, just trying to understand what happens after. And that understanding of what happens after based off what I was taught and believed in then was this place of heaven, hell, and purgatory.
Hmm.
And if you do something wrong or you decide to exit yourself out of this world, you're going to be in a place where you're kind of stuck in the middle. Or if you do horrible things, you're going to go to hell. Or, if you're a good person, you go to heaven. So I would always kind of sit with that and say, well, how do we even determine that? Where does that even come from? Right? Because my definition of good or bad or in between could be very different compared to the next person. So how does that fit in? So it just raised so many questions for me. And that's where it kind of like started to really unfold that idea of, I don't really think that's a thing. And, in mediumship, I've learned that we have to come from a place of neutrality.
Yeah.
We have to come from a place of not adding our beliefs or bias. It should always come from a place of being neutral and understanding. And that's probably one of the most important things that I have learned. I mean, you can see there's so many different mediums and so many different beliefs. And that's another thing that I'm always saying, like everything is just that. It is belief and it is perspective on what it is you want to do with that belief. How will you perceive that? So I don't know. I'm kind of like a big thinker, like almost philosophically, always trying to dive into things and just learn more about it. But I don't know. I feel like there's just this sense of detachment. I needed to kind of step away from that. And that's what leads me to, that led me to a place of not having that fear anymore and just kind of really understanding that aspect of the afterlife. Yeah.
Yes. So interesting. To the extent that you're happy to share, what do you believe now, or what have you been shown about the afterlife?
So for me, my belief is that everybody crosses over. You'll have some people who will say that some spirits are stuck. But again, when we talk about stuck, we're stuck. Is that purgatory? And that's not my belief, just based off of the many different ways that people have passed. And through my experience, I'm bringing spirit forward through the many ways of, passing. It's never been an issue on where they were or the messages that come through from them. So again, I could have a soul that exited themselves to the other side. Now, some people would say, hey, that person should be stuck, or they're earthbound, or they're this, And I would say, well, how is that possible if they're coming through and they're giving the messages and they're telling them that they're okay? They're showing pieces of their life and memories. I would beg to differ because I, through experience, have not felt that at all from them. If anything, I felt love. I felt compassion. Yeah, they have expressed some feelings of apologies and resentment. And when I say resentment, I really mean in a place of how maybe they were to the people that I read
Hmm.
for. Maybe they weren't the best of character in life. Maybe they were somebody who was super judgmental. So it comes from a place of just understanding them, and knowing that everybody crosses over. It doesn't matter, but the messages are always different just based off of the experience of the soul. They're all different, just like we are. For me, it's like they're alive. It's just they come through how they come through, and I just bring through the information.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So it sounds like you've kind of dissolved some of that Catholic upbringing in terms of, some of the more fear-based stuff. And my belief, again, based on whatever, listening to people like you, reading, immersing myself in this, is that, everything is just love, right? Like love, unconditional love is our natural state. It's the state of source. Yeah, it makes it a lot less scary, to think about going to that place, which of course we all will. So,
Yeah.
I actually want to circle it back for a second to what we were talking about kind of with your students and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've brought this up in different ways in different conversations I've had on the show, as well as just this whole thing about intuition, because I'm someone who can really reflect on all the things that I've achieved and accomplished and be like, I really have some great intuition. It led me to this great place. But it's like when I'm looking for it, I feel like I can't find it. So, for example, like when I first saw one of your videos pop up and you're like, okay, guess which stone, I'm going to pick up. And I'm like, I got it. And I like got the first bunch of them. And then I would watch the videos and I would try harder because it like then mattered to me. I wasn't just like, oh, this is neat. Like I'm passing this. I'm like, oh, it matters. I should get this right. Otherwise, I'm not intuitive and I can't trust my intuition. Right. So it's so weird how it's like I believe that I have it and that it's good in hindsight and in certain circumstances, but if I'm trying to access it, it seems impossible. Is that something that you see a lot?
Oh, 100%. If you try, or actually putting yourself in the logical state of thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you do that, you're already not in tune with your intuition.
Hmm.
When you give yourself time to think about it, you are already out of that intuitive flow. When it comes to understanding your intuition, it's all about trust again, right? It's about trusting and just allowing whatever it is to come in, what you feel, hear, know, and just kind of give it the way it comes in. But the second you start to debate and say, wait a second, that's it, it's over, game over. You have already went into the logical side of your mind, and now you are no longer in that intuitive state. So it's all about the flow. It's all about just kind of letting go and just trusting yourself
Hmm.
always.
Yeah, I'm very good at using getting something wrong as evidence against myself.
Yes. Yes. No, because I think that's so important. That's actually something I teach students to actually have a journal. Have
Hmm.
a journal and really reflect on times where you were right about an intuitive hit. And you maybe, and a game that I like to tell people is go, if you're going to a new restaurant and you've never been there before, sit with that in your mind prior to going to the restaurant. Sit with what does this place look like? What is the color of the walls? What does the furniture look like? What is something specific on the menu that I'm going to see that I can pick up intuitively? So it's almost being able to kind of visualize that in your mind, get a sense of feeling, a knowing, maybe even pick up on what kind of music they might be playing if there's any music. So it's kind of painting the picture and putting yourself in that place and bringing it alive. And then when you get there, you're like, wow, yes, the walls are red. And yes, they do have these special looking chairs. And oh my goodness, yes, there is that special thing that I thought about on the menu and it's there. So it's like playing these games. And that's really what it is. It's like strengthening up yourself to visualize and put yourself in a place of this is what it's going to be and just being assertive with what's coming in and just trusting it and then reflecting back on it. So that's a fun little thing you could do for yourself to kind of exercise that if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking about it like a game versus this thing where you have so much pressure to be right or wrong, is definitely more helpful than how I often tend to approach it. So let's use the example because we'll talk about where people can find you after when we kind of get to the end. But if they go on your page, you have a lot of little intuitive exercises. So how do you recommend people approach those?
Approach the exercises
Yeah,
or
like because again, when it's like I've seen it in passing and I'm like, oh, I think that one, and it's like right, and then when I'm like, no, I'm gonna get this right, I always get it wrong. So like, I don't know, how should people prepare themselves to succeed with that type of stuff?
I would say to just kind of like, I know that you can pause the videos. Like I know on TikTok you can pause them, and I
Mhm.
believe you can do that on. So if you're not sure and you just want to take yourself to a place of just being, okay, let me just be in a place of just letting go. I say, if there's a crystal, where do you feel pulled to? Because most times when I'm doing those type of videos, I'm actually like pushing my energy into it, and I'm
Mhm.
like pulling so you can feel some sense of pulling of which one I'm going to pick. So it's really like feeling into it. What is it that is popping up in your mind? If there's a specific thing that just kind of flashed in there and just trusting it, but coming into it relaxed,
Okay.
coming through it relaxed, take some breaths, really pushing away anything you were doing before, anything you have to do after, and just being present. That's what it takes, being present and just really releasing the pressure of having to be right. So that is what I usually tell everybody to do. It's about the present moment, not thinking about anything else except what's right in front of you, and then just kind of feeling into the situation.
Yeah. And one of the common threads in the conversations I've been having specifically about intuition is like the importance of having a clear mind to really be able to hear it. Cause, I'd really prefer my intuition just shout at me and when I'm in the middle of chaos, but it doesn't really seem to work that way.
Well, I think yeah, it's hard. but usually it shows up in the body first
Yeah.
before it'll show up anywhere else, right? So it's like paying attention. I want to say the gut, right?
Hmm.
Feeling anything within there to kind of help you navigate that. So you could try to pay attention to that in those moments. But it's hard. It takes development. It takes for you to really trust and just expanding on that awareness. But some people will say dive into meditation. I like meditation. Don't get me wrong for specific things, but I feel like the most important thing when it comes to intuition is just kind of sitting in the silence, just sitting in a place, closing your eyes, just becoming aware of what's happening around you, the noises. How does the temperature feel in this room? Can I hear anything outside of that? It's just closing your eyes and just really lighting up all your senses because your inside senses are going to be the same thing as the outside senses. So putting yourself in that place of just kind of closing your eyes and just being present allows you to really open up that awareness. So that's something else that is great for practice.
Yeah, that's definitely something I know to do, but don't do often enough. So it's a good reminder for probably
Yeah.
many others as well. So, with this show, Spirituality for Skeptics, my goal is never to bring anyone over the line. I have no agenda. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm here to be a student and to learn alongside the listeners.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you, obviously, we talked about your own skepticism of yourself and your gifts and what comes through, but how have you handled skeptics of your work?
So I welcome them. That's
Mhm.
first and foremost. I love to welcome them. Now, I always talk about like there being two type of skeptics, right? We'll have one that's completely closed off and they're just like, no, I'm not having it. That's it. This is what I believe in and that's it.
Mhm.
And it's an energetic thing, really. It is. So if somebody's completely closed off, it's going to be hard to really open up to the energy and feel into what's happening. You might be able to pick bits and pieces, but you won't get the full picture versus
Right.
somebody who is skeptical but open minded. Very
Mhm.
different, right? And when you walk into that type of energy, they're open. They're curious, right? Because really, when you think about skepticism, that's really what it is. It's a place of exploring, a place of being curious. So that's what I tell them, just be curious and let's just see what happens. And that's kind of what it is. So I just kind of open them up to the energy. I always walk them through exactly what's going to happen, how I read, how the information comes in, so they could get a little bit of an idea of how I work because everybody works very differently. And I just kind of start giving information based off their energy, if it's a psychic read, or I will bring in a loved one and they will come through
Mhm.
and bring messages. And they would be like, how would you know that? You wouldn't know that. You don't even know me. So the reading and the evidence speaks for itself. And I think that having somebody who is open minded, but still questionable it's a beautiful thing. I really do think it's beautiful to be skeptical because at the same time you are questioning your path, and I think that's just the overall human experience. We are here to ask questions. We're here to try to figure things out that feel like they're in alignment with us. So it's just really about being curious and just being open, but letting them know, it's okay if this is not your vibe, it's not your vibe, and that's fine. I'm never going to push anything onto anybody or my beliefs either.
And I think the skepticism lens is also really important for honing the skill of discernment. I'm so open and so I have such a strong story that I'm like such a beginner in my spiritual journey and I don't know anything and all of this stuff. Right. So, and I had an experience, that lasted for multiple years. I won't go into too many details, but, someone who I had deeply trusted, who was very, very much like a spiritual guide and things like that. It turned out not so good. And it was like only in hindsight that I was like, how did I not see all of that? How did I not see those tactics that were being used? And so I feel like, yeah, that lens of skepticism is so important because not everyone has the best intentions in mind. And I'm sure there's other reasons it's important as well. But that was definitely an important one for me to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think discernment is definitely something it's needed within the spiritual community because here in the States, there's really no umbrella that kind of guides or you have any type of laws or anything that, except in certain places, like you can't tell people you're a fortune teller. Like here in New York,
Mhm.
you have to say it's for entertainment purposes and
Yeah.
that's it. But like in the UK, they actually have an umbrella that watches, and oversees psychic work, mediumship. And it's a little bit more strict over there. Had that be over here, then be a different world. Here, anybody could call themselves a psychic, a medium, right? You can take a 5-minute course online and all of a sudden, hey, I'm a medium. Like,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't work like that. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes actual real life reads, it takes you having the experience. And discernment is very much so needed within this community, and I don't know, I'm not very open, as far as it comes to the scope of opening myself up to many different mentors. I too have had that skepticism. And for me, it's just like it's always a gut punch. And I'm like,
Mhm.
ugh, something's off. I'm not even going to further dive into this. But again, too, my humanist will come in and I will give people so many different chances because, that's just me being kind. And yeah, that's kind of led me to some places where I wish it wouldn't have, but it's an experience. So I feel like even people who I learned from that I didn't agree with everything that they taught me, I still learned something. It was still an experience and it taught me what I don't want to be like and maybe how I should teach. And maybe that's why the way I teach is it's very different. I feel like it's very layered. I try to make things very easy to understand and practical. So discernment is very important for
Yeah.
real because it can definitely take you into so many different avenues in this work.
Yeah, and helping, your students do things in a practical way, I think is also really important. Otherwise, it can just be so abstract. You're like, what am I supposed to be doing? So, yeah, that's really helpful. So, I have two kind of fun questions for you as we're wrapping up. I'd love to know what has been the most unbelievable or remarkable or profound thing that has happened to you spiritually.
For me, spiritually, oh my goodness, I have constantly repeated this death and rebirth of my life. I swear it happens like every 4 months for me. So it's a constant waking up to my truth. So for me to say this one thing that would be this overall amazing experience for me, it's always felt like a part of me has always died a little just to grow a little bit more. So I want to say that each and every experience that I have, when it feels like my world is crashing down, it allows me to step further into my truth. Um, so it's like layered over time. But as far as the overall experience and the most amazing thing for me, it's always just being with people that I read for in many different aspects, areas all over the world, because of, doing the stuff online, you just read so many different people. But it's just being able to help them and open up a piece of themselves that maybe they felt like they lost before. And I get an email or something that'll tell me, like, hey, thank you so much, and that for me is just like, that is the most amazing thing for me every single time. But a little bit of me has to die every single time in order for me to kind of get better at what I do. So I'm grateful for the death and rebirth process for me
Yeah.
every single time.
Well, and the more something like that happens, the more you're able to be like, okay, I know this pattern. It's painful while I'm in it, but good always comes out of it. So it's good to have that kind of evidence. And as I mentioned kind of in the beginning, and we were all talking before, Glenn, my producer, when you two first connected prior to us connecting, he just kind of came away from a conversation with you feeling like he had received exactly what he needed to hear. It wasn't planned that way. Like you didn't go into that conversation to have a reading, but it's just like these things that came through. And, he was like, it was a healing, I didn't know I needed at the moment. And it was just such a beautiful experience for him. So I can see how that would be the case for all of these people that you're doing these readings with. And so last question, and this is often a big one for people, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what is the one thing you want people to know based on all of the work that you've done?
The one thing that I would love for people to know is just allow yourself to just kind of live,
Mhm.
live through this life experience, whether you have moments that you feel like it's hard and I don't understand it. Just allow yourself to be present. That is the most important thing. Allowing yourself to have this human experience, but also allowing yourself to step into new doors without feeling like you have to have this expectation of how it should go, but just allowing yourself to kind of flow through life. And that's something I tell everybody. And I think it's important. And it's kind of something that I feel like is lost because everybody feels like they need to know what happens next. And
Mm.
the reality is, we don't even know if we walk out the door, are we going to get hit by a car or something, right? Like we
Yeah,
don't know. So the most important thing we have is right now. So
that's
that's why I try to
beautiful.
help people.
And us humans, we love our certainty, right?
Yes.
So good. So good. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and your brilliance. I feel like I can't remember when the interview I watched with someone else with you was recorded, but you're working on a book. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I've been working on it for a while. It's actually what I named my business after. It's called Awakened Insights. And I feel like it's just my life story of how I awakened, how I opened up into my abilities and just real life experiences, but at the same time, teaching others how to walk through their own experience. So that is my book. That is
Yes,
what
it's
I'm
like
working on.
exactly what we're doing here on the show. It's helping people awaken, see their own abilities, all those things through other people's stories. And I really appreciate you sharing yours. So tell everyone where they can find you and learn more.
Thank you so much. So you can find me at ericabarretto.com and from there across all social platforms as Intuitive Universe 444.
Love it. Thank you again for being here. I feel like I got so much out of this conversation and just, feel very grounded and present and in deeper trust after just being in your energy. So thank you again so much. And I can't wait for everyone to hear this.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you love this episode and you want to make sure you don't miss out, make sure you give us a like, leave us a comment, let me know how this was for you, and also be sure to subscribe here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.